What's up, guys? This is Brave, and I am back with another review of Ready to Love. This is season 4, episode 6. The episode is titled Opposites Attract, and let's go ahead and talk about it. Alright, so the ladies meet up with Tommy, and he tells them to envision the guy that, basically they think will be theirs. Like the guy who has caught their eye. And of course we have like Vernisha, she's envisioning Joelle, and you have Amber who's envisioning Chris. He's like, okay, I don't want you guys to go on dates with them. I want you guys to go out of your comfort zone and, go on a date with somebody else. I find this interesting because why wasn't this a thing for the guys? Because I feel like the ladies, yes, they do tend to only, get one guy and then they kind of stick with them. But also I feel like the guys are very shallow. Like, this should have been a task for the guys to really get out of their comfort zone and date around. Because if we would have gotten that, then maybe the guys would have actually saw something more in Tressa. Just saying. Because no one even gave her the time of day. Yeah, I'm still not over the fact that they let Tressa go. It is what it is. Also, can I just say that we are halfway through this process and now Tommy wants them to go out and find new dates. I'm like, shouldn't they really try to explore what they already have? Like, and actually get to have a deeper connection with these people? But this is their rules. We just gonna follow. All right, cool. Alright, so we first get a date with Alexis and Ron. First of all, she said that she already had a date with AJ. And, now she was ready to have a date with Ron. Because Ron was number 2. Even though she's number 1 for him. But I don't understand where she got the idea that AJ was still checking for her. Like, can y'all please let me know what is happening? Like, unless there's something happening behind the scenes. That date that we saw, where they were out here making candles, he was not feeling her. Like, what are we watching? How is he your number 1 and he was not feeling you? I don't understand what's happening this season. Like, I feel like they are really cutting it and chopping it up, and we are missing out on a lot. Just saying. So let's go ahead and talk about their date. So at one point in the date, they were talking about how, she has a very religious background. It doesn't seem like he did, even though she said something about him having like this priestly king vibe about him. I'm like, girl, you just be making stuff up. Like, if y'all ever pay attention to Alexis, she just be rambling and it really don't be making no sense. But okay, girl. So as they go on to, continue to play this game of mini golf, he's like, oh, where are you at, with this process? And she lets him know that, there is another guy that she's interested in. As we know, she talked about AJ. And she says that, he's kind of like a playboy, or at least she doesn't know if he's a playboy or not. And he's the usual type that she goes for. So maybe, she should try something new. So then, when she asks him, like, how's his process going, my issue is that, why are we talking about chrysanthemum? Why did you directly have to say, like, oh, I know the chrysanthemum had a problem with me being your number 1. Like, I don't ever have to hear the term number 1 anymore come out of Alexis' mouth. Just saying. So, as they continue within this conversation, Alexis is like, I'm sorry, actually this was in her confessional. She's like, oh, either he could get a trophy wife or someone that he can build something with. And I'm like, why are you dissing Chrysanthemum? Like, I feel like she was cool with you. I don't think that we need all this. Let me throw little shots here and there at her because we fighting over the same guy. It's real high school. So she wants to know, what puts her above Chrysanthemum. And at first I was like, ooh, I don't know if he got the answer, but he ended up, having something good to say about how she would elevate him in all these different ways. And she gives him a hug at the end, and it seems like they had a good date. He said what she wanted to hear, and that was that. All right, so we next see a date with AJ and Amber. I did not see this one coming. Honestly, I did not see Amber on many guys' radar. Like, honestly, the way the matchups happened with this season, it was just very interesting because people are coming out of the woodworks going on dates that you would have never thought looked at each other. But whatever. So they're on this date. She already feels like he's this playboy and, he's arrogant. So she wants to see if, having a conversation with him will change her views of him. So honestly, the first thing that I thought about when I saw them on this date is, so AJ, do you have money or at all? Because y'all just met, it looked like in a park, it had some smoothies on a bench. Sir, you have not had to spend a dime. But I digress. So, he ended up asking Amber, like, so who are you feeling? And she's like, well, do you actually want to know that? And he's like, yeah. So she says, of course, Chris. And then she says, Ron. Here goes Ron's name again. I'm like, who? Where? Where did Ron come from? But I digress. And he's like, I'm not even in the running. And like she said, we haven't talked. I feel like they've been here for, a while now. And he probably ain't said hello to her. So, yeah, why would you think that you would be in somebody's top or even on somebody's mind when you ain't spoke to them, sir? So, as this date, I guess you could say, goes on, she's just, explaining to him, listen, you're not really approachable. I think that you're kind of arrogant. You don't have to work for it because you know that you're attractive. And, I mean, I will say, that was a lot for somebody to take in, considering this is y'all first date. I kind of wish that that's not what they talked about. I wish that they would have gotten to know each other. What do you like to do? Because if you just gonna run down why y'all haven't talked, it's not gonna end good. Come on now. Because at the end of this, in her confessional, she's like, AJ is not the guy for me. And AJ feels like, wow, this process is moving, very quickly. And he didn't realize that people are already doing this whole number ones thing. So we'll see what happens for both of them. All right, so the next day is Chris and Chris. We have Chrysanthemum going out with Chris. And first of all, I just want to know, what the hell did Chris have on? Not Chrysanthemum, but Chris. Because that hat with that shirt, boy, if you don't quit it, just stop. Just stop. So they talk about how, she grew up in Italy until she was the age 7. And then she moved to the States. She just met her dad 6 years ago. They're really close. Chris opens up about how his dad denied him for years. And then sometimes he would touch base with him. And out of nowhere, his dad ended up passing away. And, it really did have an effect on him. So she opened up about how her mom wasn't really affectionate. So she doesn't really know how to be affectionate. She just knows that when she was growing up, her mom didn't really say, I love you, but she just made sure everything was taken care of. So that further let Chris be like, oh, wait, hold up. So how are you in relationships? And she's like, oh, I don't really have relationships. So that even makes me realize that, maybe that's why she even chose the career as a flight attendant, because she gonna be gone all the time. She's not really looking for a relationship. She just wanna, meet somebody, chill with them sometimes, hook up, and then they're done. You know what I mean? Because she gotta fly out. She gotta do all this other stuff. I find this to be very interesting. So at this point in the conversation, Chris, the guy, he realizes that she ain't really feeling me like that. So he's like, can I just kind of read this situation? I feel like you're 70-30, about how you feel. And in her confessional, she's like, yeah, he's about right. And I feel like they're going to have a great friendship out of this. But them dating, probably not. All right, y'all. We see Amber again. She is pulling an Alexis. She doing multiple dates in one episode. Okay, girl, I see you. You kind of snuck up on us, because I feel like at one point, the only person who was feeling Chris was Amber, and the only person who was feeling Amber was Chris. But I see we was wrong, y'all. All right, so let's go ahead and talk about this date that she had. I mean, this episode, she is the one who's setting up the dates. So it makes sense that we see more of her. So we actually saw her go on a date with Joelle. And I'm just like, oh, hold up. That's vernisha man, girl. Hold on. So, first of all, the fact that Joelle came in and he said he wanted to give her a kiss on the jaw, not the cheek, y'all, the jaw. I said, maybe that's a New Orleans thing. They don't really do that out here where I am. They don't say a kiss on the jaw, but okay. So, Amber ends up asking Joelle, does he want to be married again? And of course, he's like, yes, I do. I've done the work. Losing Courtney was really hard, but I've gotten through that. And, he gives a great answer, right? But this is what I like. I like the fact that he asked her something that was very, very important. How do you feel about dating a man who is like 10, 11 years older than you? Because as we know, Amber is like 31, 32 years old. And Joelle is in his 40s. So that's the first part of the question. Second part, also, I am a man who has kids and their mother has passed away. So how do you even feel about, stepping in, becoming a stepmother? And also, you're not just an added parent because they have lost a parent. So how do you even feel about this entire situation? And I feel like that was a very great question to ask her because, honestly, if you are a single woman, you don't have children, that is a lot to come into a relationship and he already got kids. And at that point, you would definitely have to be the stepmother to these kids. So her answer was that, she would never want to try to replace the kid's mom, but she is very nurturing and she does like kids. And I'm like, yeah, girl, but that's only answering one part of the question because he still is 10 years older than you. So what about that part? But then I realized maybe Amber is attracted to older guys because she was interested in old ass Troy, as well as Chris, I believe, is like 10 years older than her. I just wish that she had more options who are her age. Just saying. I also love the fact that in his confessional, Joelle was like, you're not about to catch Joelle chasing down a 31-year-old because usually they ain't got their life together. But, Amber is a tad bit different because on paper, she sounds great. Just saying. On paper, Amber sounds great. But we don't really know. So they ended up continuing the date. It went well. At the end of the day, he's like, "Oh, well, you did say that you were going to, give me a kiss on the cheek if the date went well." So she ends up giving him a kiss on the cheek, and she's like, "Oh, I do feel kind of bad because, Chris is my number one." And I'm like, "Girl, it was a peck on the cheek. Relax." All right, so the next date that we see is Liz and Jason. Me personally, before I even watched this date happen, all I could think was, Liz, move along. He ain't the one for you. Because the only reason that he even looked your way was because of physical things, because he saw your boobs and your hair down. Yeah, move along, girl. Go back to David. All right, so let's just go ahead and talk about their date. So we already know that when it comes to Liz, she's going to ask the number one question in her mind, which is, how do guys feel about abstinence? And here goes Jason. He's like, if you're about abstinence and celibacy and all that, I'm here for it. It might be a struggle, but I'll do it. I don't believe him. I feel like he'll go get it from somewhere else. I don't trust Jason. So Liz just has to tell him, like, well, I got on this show because I'm trying to find a husband. I'm not trying to be dating nobody for 8 years. I'm already 40 and, he's 36. So she's like, dude, do you have a problem dating someone who's older? And he's like, nah, he don't. You can look at Jason and tell that he don't. Okay. I just personally feel like he needs to go back to Kiara, but it is what it is. So they end up, getting on the Ferris wheel, seeing the city. Yeah, that was all cute. But this is one thing that I have noticed about Jason. Let me know if you guys have noticed it as well. He lets the women do all the talking. They do all the questioning. He only gives answers. Am I the only one who keeps saying that? Like, he's never really like, oh, so like, what do you do in this situation? What do you like to do? How do you feel about this or that? You never see that with Jason. I find that to be so interesting. But let me just go ahead and wrap up their date or whatever. So, first of all, he kissed her when they were on the Ferris wheel. I said, okay, this was just like a little peck on the lips. It didn't seem like she was ready for it, but she was fine with it. So then when they were like packing up to go, I'm just like, Liz, what are you putting in your purse? Because it looked like she was taking the whole table setting with her in her purse. But whatever. He was like, oh, I got something. And then next thing you know, he like leans in and they kiss again. But am I the only one who feels like it was a little awkward? Like, she wasn't ready, she didn't expect it, or like, I mean, I get that she didn't expect it, but like, I don't know, something about that second kiss that they did, I don't know, it just looked real weird. Alright, so now we have AJ and Kiara. They are going on a date, and here's the thing about this. I just feel like at this point, he has to be her number one and she's his number one, because I could have sworn Tommy said to go with your second pick, but we keep seeing Kiara and AJ on dates. So, like, girl, is he your number two or is he really your number one? But let's just go ahead and talk about this date. All right, so she basically tells him that, on one side, she feels like, they get along well, they have a few things in common and all that stuff. But she also feels like he's a wild card. I don't understand why she feels like he's a wild card, considering how much interest he has shown for her. I don't get it, but, that's her feelings. Okay, so they end up playing a game of, was it Never Have I Ever? The first question was like, have you ever cheated? They both ended up taking a drink. The next question, though, was, have you ever been in love? And, they take a drink, and he's like, yeah, I've been in love a couple of times. And she's like, well, what happened with those relationships? And she even followed up by saying, did you communicate what you needed in those relationships? And he's like, I communicated it, but I don't know how effectively I communicated what, I was feeling. So at this point, this is when I was like, all right, this date is going south. So she's like, oh, well, I just find that interesting because, if you communicate with that person, then clearly both of your love languages were not, on the same path and all this stuff. And I'm just like, girl, you really are dragging this. I'm sorry. I just feel like if a person tells me, oh, things didn't work out in my previous relationships, and then you further asked him, did you communicate, what it was? He admitted that he may not have effectively communicated what he needed to say. Okay, cool. But that doesn't mean that whatever that he needed or wanted, the other person had to reciprocate. For example, I'm going to use Martell Holt and Melody Holt, because, they're the perfect example. Martell has communicated to his wife, Melody, that he want head every damn day, it sounds like. And she's like, I'm not down with that. Okay, so he went outside of the relationship and then they got a divorce. My point is that all because you effectively communicate with somebody, that still does not mean that you are going to, make your relationship work out. So I was just like, okay, girl, I don't understand why you're putting your attorney hat on so hard, but okay. Now, don't get it twisted. I am absolutely no fan of AJ, but I just want Kiara to stop wasting her time. Like, she then goes on to talk about how, she feels like whenever they have a conversation with each other, he starts to veer off, and there's like something going on with their communication not matching up. And I'm like, girl, it's because he's El Cheapo. You the one who got us all started on calling this man El Cheapo. Like, he's just not the guy for you. Why are you wasting your time? Kiara should have never given AJ a second chance. I would have had that conversation with him, and once he was like, oh, it's because my card was declined, blah, 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 I would have been like, yeah, but when I confronted you about this over the phone, you said something else. Therefore, there will be no AJ and Kiara on this show. Because then we had AJ out here feeding us this thing about how, because in my childhood, I had to be so independent, blah, 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 blah. Sir, bye. I'm about sick and tired of y'all blaming y'all childhood for some of this stuff. Like, no, you just don't know how to communicate. Also, let's not forget the fact that I feel like AJ is definitely a player. I feel like he definitely expects for the woman to put in way more work than he has to because he has the good looks in the relationship. And I feel like, girl, just move on because he ain't it. So when she was like, you have been in my top 3 basically this whole time, I'm like, girl, but why though? Like, Kiara, you could do so much better. Why are we doing this to ourselves? All right, so let's go ahead and talk about this next date. It is Vernisha and Dietrich. And I'm just like, Dietrich can go already. I don't need to see this man on my screen because of what he did to my girl Tressa. But let's just go ahead and talk about their date. First of all, I just want to say I'm giving the side eye to Dietrich when he was like, yeah, when we're out in public, there's sparks. And I'm just like, I don't see sparks, but okay, if that's how you feel, because you got to cling on to somebody because ain't nobody else checking for you, Dietrich. So within this conversation that Dietrich is having with Vernisha, she's just trying to figure him out because she don't really know Dietrich like that. So she's trying to figure out, like, is he, a leader or is he not? And that's what she needs. She wants a man to lead her. She wants a man to be clearly the head of the household. Of course she can take care of herself. She's been taking care of herself. But she's like, listen, I want somebody to take some of the slack off of me. And I absolutely get it. Now, Dietrich, he is very, it's like pulling teeth when you have a conversation with him. First of all, he's giving her very short answers. Usually after she'll say something, then he's like throwing a question back out to her. I'm like, I don't know. I feel like she ain't your pace, baby. She's not your pace at all. And I must say, I am absolutely with Vernisha when she was like, if I have to lead a man, that defeats the purpose of having a man. I said, well, that's a word. That's a word. All right, so now we get to Tommy's lounge so that the ladies can talk about what has happened this week. So the first lady that we talked to is Alexis, and she talks about her date with Ron and how, it went well. According to her, it was magical. There was a lot of hugs, a lot of piggyback rides, and all of this. And, of course, she had to end it by saying, he said that I'm his number one. And I'm just like, girl, you love to throw this in Chrysanthemum's face. Like, I really hope that you end up with Ron and he doesn't start feeling Chrysanthemum more. That's all I'm going to say. So the next lady is Amber. She talks about her date with Joel, and of course she mentions the whole kiss thing, and that leads Vernisha to feel some type of way because they've been talking all this time and they have not shared a kiss yet, which I'm kind of surprised about. So now we have Kiara, and of course she's talking about her date that she had with AJ. Now she says that this is the best date she has ever had. Just because he opened up a car door and fed her lobster. I said, oh, okay, that's interesting. So when Tommy ended up asking her, like, hey, so does that mean that this guy's your number one, she's still on the fence, and she's like, still between him and Jason. She feels like Jason is a safe space. Even though I feel like I haven't seen them go on a date in a while. But with AJ, she just don't know. Honestly, she just don't know. So we get Liz. She's talking about her date with Jason. And, she feels that it was romantic and how they, got to know each other a little bit better. And she, of course, she has to say that they kissed on the Ferris wheel. Now, in the confessional, you have Kiara. Actually, when she was looking at Liz while Liz was speaking, you could tell she was feeling some type of way. But in her confessional, she was like, she's very competitive. And basically, she is coming for her man, Jason. I said, oh, all right, Kiara, here we go. So now let's talk about who's in the bottom. So we first have vernisha talk about how she went to some restaurant with Dietrich. The food was good. And that was pretty much about it, because she doesn't want, a guy who's not a leader. And clearly Dietrich is not a leader for her. So Dietrich is in her bottom, and Liz, she said that, he's not the guy for her either. So there we go. 2 votes for Dietrich already. So then when we asked Chrysanthemum about her date with Chris, which we already know, they were just going to end up being friends after that date because there was no romance in it. So at that point, you have Kiara and Alexis saying that they are basically friend zoning Chris because they just don't see him in that way. Now, I've already said I don't feel like a lot of ladies are actually feeling Chris, and it's only Amber who likes him. So now you have Amber, who she has to pipe up and say who she's not feeling, and she's not feeling AJ, of course. She feels like he's just there to play the game, and I mean, I kind of agree with her. Now, I will say that I think that she went in a little bit on AJ because so many of the women named Chris, and there was a risk that her man was about to leave because she was throwing out everything she could about how AJ ain't the guy, who's there for love. So then vernisha comes in, is like, yeah, for me, I would have to say AJ as well. And I'm like, but sis, you just threw Dietrich out too. So you just taking 2 turns? Okay. Next thing you know, we got Liz chiming in. She says that, their belief systems are not the same because, of course, she wants to wait till she gets married. He does not. He wants to test drive. And, that's her reason for putting him in the bottom. So, out of nowhere, here comes Alexis. And I'm thinking, okay, she gonna, stand up for AJ because he was her number one. No, her response was, after hearing all this, he kind of going to the bottom. I said, girl, wait a second. The top of this episode, you just said he was your number one. He technically has not done anything to you that should have shifted your mind that deep. Like, I just don't see it. Because the way she been writing about how AJ is her number one, I just find it to be so interesting that just like that, she go ahead and switch her mind. All right, Alexis, I see you playing the game. So, at this point, we see who is in the bottom. It is Dietrich and it is AJ. So, Alexis talks to AJ, right? But am I the only one who felt like she made this all about her? And about how he haven't, hit her up yet, and how they haven't been on another date and all this stuff. And I'm just like, girl, shouldn't you be there telling him how, the ladies feel this way and that way about you? Not so much about you, but of course, we can see that Alexis is very all about herself. So she finally gets it together and, she lets him know that, the lady said this and that about you or whatever, but they still think that you are ready to love, so you're still going to be here. Now, on the flip side, we have Kiara who's talking to Dietrich, and Dietrich is basically saying how, this whole process has made him a shyer person. That's not who he usually is, and it's a little too late, sir. So Kiara has to let him know, sorry, you're going home. You're not ready to love. And that was pretty much the episode. Let me know what you guys thought about this episode. It definitely was not a favorite episode of mine. Go ahead and like, comment, subscribe to my channel, and I will talk to you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.